Hello everyone, and welcome to the second installment of direngrey All Songs Reviewed. If you haven't seen my last review on them, then go ahead and check that one out, where I reviewed their first EP, Misa, and their first album, Gauze. This is the rating system that we will use today. A is good, F is bad, and for top tier songs, we have gold. And Gauze had a ton of gold. In fact, let's take a look at Gauze really quick. And yeah, we have a lot of gold, and honestly, looking back, Gauze might actually be my favorite album of direngrey. But these next few albums I've actually never really heard before. And we're gonna move on to Macabre. And personnel for this album is dramatically smaller. We have a violinist on one song, as well as a new producer, Hoppy Kamiyama. The only personnel that has retained from Gauze is executive producer Dynamite Tommy. And to put things in perspective, Gauze had about 7 producers, while this album has 2, not counting direngrey themselves. There are also no mixing and no mastering credits, at least online, where I could find. So lower budget and lower personnel. Let's see how this album does. Okay, so this one is interesting, and it's my first time hearing it. It certainly sounds different than where Gauze had left off. Kyo's melody sounds very similar to the Hungarian dance number 5. But honestly, this one is kind of in the middle for me. Apparently there's some Russian spoken here. But yeah, this one didn't really spark me in any way. But it's pretty okay. I give it a C. Okay, so the song's a little better. I feel like you can take different clips of this song and show it to someone and they can get the wrong impression of the entire song. That's not a bad thing. The drum part is pretty cool, and the distorted drum solo was unexpected. I feel like it's a mix of their heavy style with their lunacy style, and it's pretty interesting. Drum part makes this song worth anyone's time, so I give it a solid B. Alright, now we have a Die composition, Wake. This one is good too. There are a few songs where direngrey kind of played with the sound that is associated with alternative rock, and this sounds like one of them. It's a sound that I personally like, and it's a sound that I think direngrey does well. If you like songs like Amber from Vulgar, then that's kind of the sound I'm talking about. This one is composed by Die, like I said before, and now that I'm looking at composer credits, I wonder if he'll be the one responsible for the other alternative rock sounding songs. This one is pretty solid. If you like this type of music, I give it an A-. Okay, we move on to track 4. This is one I wish I heard back in the day. If you are a drummer or a bass guitar player, then I think you'll really get a lot out of this song. I love the time changes, and I love the breakdowns towards the end of the song. And I like that there's a lot to take in with it, and this one definitely requires multiple listens to fully grasp it. And the end of the song sounds vastly different than the rest of it, and the musical ideas are some unexpected ones. This one is easily an A+, and composed by a bass player, so he's pretty good at what he does. Okay, Hydra. This one is kind of a direngrey classic, and I actually remember this one. I remember being, younger and actually going to a library, finally able to look up direngrey in the early days of YouTube. And the only live performance I could find was this song here, and I remember not liking it. And listening to the studio version today, I still really don't care for it. I know a lot of people like it, but for me, it's kind of below average by direngrey standards. Maybe they wrote it with a live performance in mind, or manufactured it in a way where they could extend it as long as they want, you know, kind of like Zan. But yeah, it's not a very busy song. Even the lyrics are kind of repetitive. Drum part is pretty cool. It's the only thing that kind of breathes. I'm going to give this one a C-. It's tolerable, but compared to everything else they've done so far, it might be like one of my least favorite direngrey songs. Man, where has this one been all my life? This one has a really good violin part and a violin solo, and that's just really hard to ignore. Like, it's really good. It also has a laid-back alternative rock style, and Kiso's vocals are really calm and somber. I think this is probably a really underrated song. The drum and bass part are really well done, and I actually got a bit lost in it, so it kind of took me out of my review mode. As if they knew, there's actually a jump scare in this calming song, and some speculate it's an audio error, but I do not agree with that. I think it was put in there on purpose. Pretty crafty and unique, a really good one, best on the album so far. I'm gonna give it the gold, and this one, the composer credit goes to Shinya, so another really interesting thing. I thought I heard all of his songs, but apparently not. So yeah, this one gets the gold. Next we have Cube. This one is okay. I'm starting to realize that the mix on this album is not at the level of Gauze. And the guitar parts so far, they really haven't been that intricate as Gauze either. The intro, the bass guitar part, and the drum part is what makes this song above average for me. So listening to this song, you'll still get something out of it. The vocal part is quite good too. I think I'm gonna put this one at a B-. Okay, so we have Barry. This one is kind of weird, but I actually kind of like it. So basically, from what I could gather, this song is from the perspective of a 9-year-old who likes raspberry jam. She finds a gun in her parents' drawer and blows her parents' brains out, and equates the brain matter to raspberry jam, and she then kills herself. Okay, so yeah, probably gonna have to put the viewer discretion advised thing in the beginning of this one. Chorus is pretty upbeat, and the bass line sounds really crazy. There are these samples that are used, like of a conversation. Two parents are screaming at a little girl. It's in English, and no one really knows where these samples came from. It's nowhere in the trivia, nowhere on the direngrey wiki. Couldn't find it on Wikipedia. So yeah, no one really knows. This one is pretty interesting. If you want to freak people out, put this one on full blast. And yeah, you do not forget this song after you hear it. So it's a pretty good one. I give it an A. This is the longest direngrey song ever, I believe. Unlike most reviewers, I actually appreciate when an artist attempts to do songs over the 7-minute mark. X's Art of Life, Dream Theater's Octavarium, those are some of my favorite songs of all time. And as soon as this one starts, you know you're kind of in for something. And I like the calming nature of it, and the guitar work is some of the best on the album. Drum part is incredible, and of course the bass guitar work is really good. Guitar solo is also well done as well. I've actually heard this one before as a MIDI and was always curious about the actual sound. This is a great song and you can get lost in it. Does it drag? That's one of the biggest critiques of songs over the 5-minute mark. I feel like it kind of drags, but not for the sake of prolonging the song. I think as a listener, you're supposed to get lost in it. I don't think this one is a gold. I feel it's not as powerful as their other long songs, but I still think it gets a pretty good A+. Alright, now we have Audrey. This one came out of left field, and it's pretty different from just about most of Direngrey's songs. If you're one of those listeners that think every song on an album should sound similar style, then you might actually hate this one, because this one sounds like nothing else. It's very bluesy, it has a country-like feel to it, and that's what makes it special. The intro actually made me think I accidentally clicked on a different song or something. It threw me off guard. And yeah, it is kind of a background song. Like, it doesn't demand your full attention. It could just kind of be there, and that's totally okay. Some people only like songs that are like that. This one is definitely a unique song in Direngrey's library, kind of tucked away in this album. I give this one a B+. Alright, now we have Rakshasa Country. Yeah, so I think I finally come to like kind of a middle of the road song for Direngrey. Now that I heard that there are multiple versions of this song, and this one is the least greatest, I can hear that there's not much to this song. It might have been designed for live performance, headbanging, all that stuff. This is probably a song they could just drag out, let their crowd have fun with it. It does get points for its bass guitar part, and the drums are pretty strong as well. But yeah, this song kind of drags on. I think it's a solid C. I think this is kind of middle of the road. I don't hate it, I don't like it. It's just kind of there. So yeah, I give this one a C. Alright, now we have Zakuro, or Pomegranate, composed by Koru. Direngrey messes around with a lot of genres, and discussing genres with them can get kind of controversial, because some people are like, oh, they're not metal, they're not this, they're not that. But I feel like Direngrey's kind of created a genre over the years, and that sound is like kind of soft, and it utilizes the ringing of tom drums where you think they would sound out of place, but they kind of don't. And it's followed by a simple guitar riff and very emotional lyrics and vocals. And I feel like this might be where that type of song began. So yeah, I think this one is definitely fits a genre that they're creating, or they probably started creating here. They still play around with this sound today. Like if you hear today's Direngrey, like their softer songs today, kind of sounds a little bit like this one. This might be where all of that began. I really like the simple guitar solo, and the ending to this song where Kyo's voice just kind of cuts off made me feel uncomfortable, which is, probably what they were going for. Something Sheena Ringo actually does. Some people say that this one is repetitive, and maybe it's because they came off the last song that was really upbeat, but I think this one is pretty good. It's definitely worth your time. I give it an A. Alright, this is another one that comes out of left field. Apparently this is one Kyo wrote for a girl that left him. I actually remember that there was a bunch of rumors on direngrey, and people were saying that the girl that dumped Kiso was actually Utada Hikaru. I doubt that's true. But the song itself is pretty easy to listen to. Bass guitar and drum parts are really fun to listen to. And Kiyo's vocals, for some reason, fit pop really well. I don't know why. Even though like that's totally not his thing, but it just fits. Like they have another pop song in the future, I think called Jessica, that's actually well liked, and it's very happy. I like the ending to this one, and I think that if you're showing direngrey to someone new, I think this is a nice one to showcase. Just so that you can show them obscure and really freak them out. Overall, I think this one is a pretty nice song. I'm going to give it an A-. Many direngrey fans call Macabre the band's weakest album, and I understand where they're coming from. With their first album, Gauze, it seemed like they were getting some arranging help, and the personnel was much bigger, and a lot of the songs were just better arranged. I think with Macabre, they were probably given more freedom and creativity, almost like kicking the bird out of the nest. I think this album is good, but not as good as Gauze. But even then, we did have some gold on here. And there's still plenty of songs on here that are worth checking out. But we're going to go ahead and move on to their next album. And as far as personnel goes on this one, I can't really find anything on it. But it's still under the same label as their last album. So direngrey might have even been given even more freedom on this next album. Alright, up first we have Kaigen, we have Demon Eyes. And this one is interesting to say the least. It's kind of like a headbanging song that I would consider less repetitive than Hydra. The lyrics are pretty weird, and likely due to translations, I can't really pinpoint what the lyrics are about. But from the parts I can hear out, they probably are pretty disturbing. This one doesn't really jump out at me, and I don't really dislike it either. So I'm going to give this one a solid C. Again, this one is another average song for me. It actually starts off pretty interesting with distorted drums, but as the song goes on, it gets a bit repetitive. I know the intention is to headbang and prolong the songs for live, but I feel like they write songs with that intention in the future and a little bit in the past much better than here. The drums and bass guitar part in this one are pretty good, and the ending is interesting too, so I'll give it a little bit more points than the last song. I'll give this one a C+, and those lyrics are really disgusting. I'm not even gonna mention them. Okay, so from the average songs to the above average, this one is really good. And yes, you can chalk it up to me liking the more alternative rock style and the vibe that it gives off. And though there isn't much in the instruments that are like that experimental, the panning and the mixing of this song is pretty amazing. During the bridge, you'll hear different parts of the drum set going from ear to ear. And there's also a poem going on while the singing is happening, which is something I critiqued Yokan for doing. This one is also composed by Dai, so same composers. But I think that work is better here because the poem is quieter, distorted, and it's placed behind the vocals rather than in front of the entire band. Lyrics are pretty good as they deal with the flow of time. So this one gets an A+ for me. This one is a really good song. This This one is another good one. In fact, I really like this one, as the song itself just plays around with just about every genre direngrey was messing with at this time. There's distorted screaming and a very singing vocal in the chorus that's almost like two different extremes. The drum part is amazing, and the transition between those parts makes the groove go very syncopated, almost like it's trying to cling on to the other part of the song. And that's what it feels like. It feels like this is like three different songs blended together, and their transitions aren't smooth, but it's done on purpose. And I think it's great. It's really hard to explain, so be sure to give this one a listen to. The lyrics, despite being extremely naughty, fit the song pretty well. And, as when the song is like disturbing, he's singing about sexual desire. And when the song is more sweet, he's singing more romantically. At least I think that's what's happening. Overall, I give this one an A+. This one is another must listen. Okay, so up next we have a bass player composition. This one is another alternative rock sounding song with a very powerful bass line. There's also pretty cool experimentations with the sound and mixing style as well. The song is a bit lengthy and maybe a little bit too lengthy, but I think it's still pretty good. There's a really underrated guitar solo in the middle of the song that is set up pretty uniquely, as the drums will change its tone to fit the style of solo. Bassline is really good here, and lyrically it's pretty unique. It's about a murder-suicide, driving a car into the ocean. This one gets a solid A. This one is pretty good. Okay, up next we have Embryo, which is considered a classic amongst direngrey fans, and rightfully so. This song is really powerful, and if you listen to any song off of this album, this one should be the one. The instrumentation and the guitar part set up a really disturbing yet soft vibe, but it's the lyrics and the story that demand the most attention. It's about the aftermath of losing a mother and being left with an abusive father. Feels like I'm describing movies. Vocally, it's really good too. And I love the talking approach to the first few verses. This is something Kiso will sometimes do in the future as well. It's like somebody is telling a story rather than singing it. And it makes the message of the song that much more serious. I give this one the gold, because it's just really powerful, and it's just a really different and strong experience. And it's something I don't think you'll get out of any band. So this one gets the gold. Alright, up next we have Deep Burial. This one is an instrumental by direngrey. So something to note about this album, it doesn't have an intro song, and maybe they were planning one and this was it. So what we have here is kind of like an intermission. There's a drum machine in this one, so no real drum set part, and it's filled with synthesizers and an occasional voice that sounds automated. But it's not terrible, and it's different than everything else direngrey has done so far. But I don't think it's that meaningful. It's pretty repetitive, and it gets pretty boring after like the first 30 seconds. Overall, I think this might be like the weakest direngrey song I've heard compared to their other stuff. I do commend them for doing something different, but this deep in the album, I don't really know. I think I'm just gonna give this one a D. Alright, this one is a song about television, and there was this thing in the late 90s where songs and even television shows would come on and talk about how television can be really bad for you. And I think this one is pretty solid. The instrumentation in the beginning, mixing the electronic sounds with the band sounds, something direngrey has done before. Also, the vocal part in this one is really good. You're starting to hear Kiso become a really good vocalist in this album. There's a lot of growth within this album especially. This one is pretty easy to listen to, and it doesn't really experiment all that much. I think this one is pretty good. I give it an A-. Alright, up next, The Domestic Family. I can't say that word. I might even have to censor the title of this one. This one is composed by their singer, the one with the most beautiful mind and doesn't write anything nasty at all. And yeah, I don't really know how to feel about this one. I understand that shouting the F word over and over excites some people and gets them moshing, but it just doesn't do much for me, and I know that we're going to run into that a lot with direngrey. There are some electric sounds in this one, and the drum part towards the end is pretty cool, but this wouldn't be a song I would come back to. Like, after hearing it now, I probably wouldn't put it on again. And yeah, I'm going to have to censor the title to this one. This one is okay, but it's not for me. I give it a C-. Okay, now we have Undecided, composed by Die, and this one is a really good song. It's another alternative rock sounding, something that Die is continually putting out, and he's doing a really good job with this album. This time it's with acoustic guitars, and I always love what direngrey does with acoustic guitars. Drums and bass are also pretty solid in this song, and the vocals are really top notch here. The lyrics use a lot of imagery, and reading them, in my case, you can actually see the scene, and the music and the vocals, like, they paint this really beautiful picture. The main attraction here is actually the acoustic guitars themselves, both of them, both parts. I think they realized, just like Cage, that they had lightning in a bottle, and they decided to have a dueling guitar solo, a dueling acoustic guitar solo, which is pretty wild. The chord choices with 7th chords and how the two guitars work together to build bigger chords is something I actually want to go into a deep dive on and just look into on my own when I have the time. This one is an excellent song. It gets the gold. Alright, now we have Mushi. Sometimes when I listen to direngrey, I draw a lot of connections to enka music, which is like that traditional Japanese musical style. And enka music usually covers topics that are pretty deep. And if you listen to enka, you can hear a lot of similarities to Kiso singing and that style of music. I am not saying direngrey is completely an enka group, but I feel like they draw a lot of inspiration from that style, and you can hear it full on display with this song. A deep emotional singing style that is present in this song really represents enka, in my opinion. This is a really good one as the acoustic guitars come back. This one is very vocal based, and also the drum part is really, really spotty. It doesn't groove, and it does that on purpose, and that's really good. The only thing I don't like is the fade out that happens at the very end. I feel like it happens a little bit too early. And this is one of the few songs off this album I've actually heard before, and it was a live performance, and they end it much better live and let the guitar lead play out. This version is still good though. I'm going to give this one an A+. Alright, now we have Interlude. This one is another electric intermission song. It relates to the other electronic style songs that are on here, and it serves the same purpose, an intermission. And it is worse than the other one. It's basically a 5-second loop. There are no surprises, no extra things thrown in here. I don't hate it, but I do think it's pointless. And to have 2 intermission songs, it's just kind of like, why? This one gets an F for me. I don't think anyone is clamoring for this song. I don't think anyone is like, hey, remember Interlude? So yeah, this one is really pointless. But yeah, this one shouldn't exist. Up next we have Jessica, which is a pop song and a pretty good one that ranks up there with Yokan from Gauze. This is another one that I've heard before as a drummer, and I don't remember if I tried to play this one on the drum kit, but I should have, because the drum part is really amazing. Towards the end, the drums as well as the other instruments actually play off beat and then get back on track, and it is a really cool effect. There are also surf rock fills on the guitar, which I've never heard before until just now, so that's probably like my 12th listen to of this song in my life, and you still hear new things with direngrey. Those surf rock fills are in the background, so you really have to kind of listen for them. This one's an all-around well song, and it's very easy to listen to. The ending always mystified me though. Kyo's voice becomes darker, and he's kind of grunting, and the song doesn't end on a home chord. It kind of just abruptly ends, and to make things even weirder, the official lyrics don't account for the word that Kyo is saying at the end. It's almost like something is wrong and something is glitching, and it's a really cool effect. This one is a pretty cool song to get into. I give it a solid A. Alright, this one has me a little bit perplexed. It's definitely not a song you can just listen to once. It's a 5-minute song that doesn't really feel like 5 minutes because there's just so much going on. Actually reminds me a little bit of their newer stuff in terms of song organization. I do like the synthesizer and the drums and the guitar parts, however, nothing really jumps at me. And I've heard it about 3 times. I gave this one a little bit more time than I did the other ones because there's just so much to grasp. But overall, I think I'll give it a B+ for now. This one is one of those songs that, you can change your opinion about on the next day. It can grow on you. I think this is one of those. So for now, I'm going to give this one a B+. Alright, this one is disgusting. I'm not even going to discuss the topic of this one, or the last song for that matter. A lot of these song topics in this album are getting pretty weird. And I don't want to be taken down on YouTube. And funny enough, both of the songs are available on YouTube and Spotify and all that stuff. But aside from all that weird stuff, let's talk about this song. The drums on this whole album have been really good so far, and this one is no exception. Also, the ending is pretty interesting as well. And as far as songs in this style on this album, I think this one does more for me than the other songs, the other like really heavy songs. The high falsetto parts and the vocals, while the drums are doing a snare drum 16th, kind of like a drum roll. It's actually something we see more than once from direngrey. We'll see that in the future as well. So it's something direngrey likes the sound of. Overall, this one is not really for me, but I do give it a B-. I think it's a little bit more interesting than the other one. It's good, but it's not great for me. Alright, so now we have the outro. This one is the finale for the intermission-like songs, and unlike the other two, this one works really well. It has a drum machine playing along to a piano, and the piano sounds sequenced for most of the part, so it's like not hand played, it's played by a computer. Until the later half, and it's like someone is like soloing over a sequenced piano, kind of like something Malice Miser would do in the past. Either that or it's just sequenced really well. It's nothing crazy, but I like it for what it is. And it ends pretty well too. I just wish I knew more about this song. It doesn't make sense to me that a song highly sequenced with a drum machine gets composition credit from the entire band. Like, that doesn't make sense. It sounds like this is like the work of one person late at night in a studio. But regardless, I give this one a solid B. This one is a pretty nice outro song. Overall, I think this album was a bit more to my liking than the last one. We had some gold on here, and we also had our first F, which I feel like every band or artist I do a deep dive on will have probably at least one of those. Though the album is 16 tracks, there are a little too much intermission-like songs on it. Kind of makes it look bigger than it actually is, but regardless, I think it's a pretty good album. Now we're going to go into overtime with their next EP titled Six Ugly. Much like with their last album, there aren't many notes as far as personnel goes on this one. The album art is pretty weird, and you get a pretty cool looking direngrey logo, which kind of looks like the Coca-Cola sign. I remember hearing some songs from this back in the old days, and I remember not liking it at all. But I have a new perspective today, and I'm going to give it a chance. Let's see how this one holds up. Mr. Newsman, that filthy pig. The song is pretty good, and I only heard it one other time a long time ago on old YouTube, where I saw footage of direngrey playing live, and Kiso collapsed during this song. The other members actually continued to play for a while as the chorus continued. That's the only version of this song I have actually heard. Hearing the complete version now, without Kiso passing out, it's a pretty solid song, I would say. And I actually love the melody in the verses and how it kind of messes around with the leading tone. It kind of sounds pretty wacky. The guitar riff is really cool too. I give this one an A-. I think this one is really good. Alright, we have Ugly, a heavy song composed by Shinya, which is, I think this might be his first heavy song. This one takes a bit of a different approach than the other heavy songs before. Maybe our drummer boy wanted to try his hand and do something different. It goes for a more atmospheric sound, as there are parts that are very empty, while a psycho drum beat plays at an inhuman speed, Shinya showing off his finger technique. I kind of like this one, but it drags on a little bit too long for my tastes. But with that said, I still think it's pretty good. I give this one a B-. Alright, now we have Hades. What is up with Kyo and pregnancy? I feel like on most of these lyrics I've viewed, there's always like someone pregnant or something happening with someone pregnant. This one is surprisingly good. Good drums, good guitar. Something I'm starting to notice is the decline of quality in the bass guitar parts. They're still solid, but they just don't stand out as much as they were on Gauze. But there's a pretty cool guitar solo on this one, and the vocals are also pretty good. This one is a pretty solid song. I give it a B. Alright, now we have Umbrella. There's this weird quote in the lyrics. Hey, Miss Girl is very fond of child. Now, what the heck does that mean? And do I even want to know what that means? I don't think I do. This one is composed by Shinya again. Umbrella, it's a pretty good song. I think it's very different. Very different. Good drum part and memorable melodies in this one, along with some cool backup vocals. The chorus actually sounds kind of happy, almost like a transition to pop, which makes the chorus and verse like really distinct from each other. And there's something about the quality of these songs on this album that I'm starting to notice. It's kind of like they're not produced as well as their last album. This is just an EP, so that's something that's kind of common, but I think you can really hear it here with the background vocals. There's just so much and it kind of sounds a little bit muddy. Regardless though, this one is a memorable tune and a memorable drum part. I give this one a B+. Children. Okay, look at what we have here. This one is an underrated song because I've never heard anyone talk about this song. What we have here actually kind of has elements of hip hop. It's also it's like as if the band is hearing me, because here we have a really good bass guitar part in this song. Now you might be thinking that I'm listening to bass guitar more because I made that statement, but there's actually a bass guitar solo in this song, so that it's kind of interesting. Granted, like the bass part is nowhere near the status of Cage, but this is still a really good part. The guitars on this one are also pretty fun to listen to, and Kyo goes wild vocally on this one, and I love it. This one is wacky, probably not for everyone. I probably think I'm gonna get some comments being like, whoa, what are you thinking liking this song? But I think it's just outside of the box, and that's awesome. I give this one a solid A. Alright, we have 1 Second Deep. This one is a remake of their song from their first EP, Misa. Since it's a remake of another song, I won't give it an official rating. Just kind of keep it the way it was. I actually prefer the Misa version. In this version, everything is tuned down, everything's a lower key, and it's trying to be made to fit that darker metal sound, whereas the Misa version was more free. There was more singing on that one. In my opinion, they turned something that was pretty unique into like a mosh song. Like they're trying to make it fit the other heavier songs. And I get that's the direction they were going, but I prefer the original with the higher vocals, and the original was just really unique. Alright, Six Ugly was a lot better than I remembered, and we really didn't have a bad song on it. Sure, the quality and production is lower, but that's something you expect with EPs. I still think you can get something out of it, and I still think you can get a lot of joy out of these songs. Well, I hope you enjoyed this installment of All Songs Reviewed. Join me next time as I try to fit 3 full-length albums in one video: Vulgar, Withering to Death, and The Marrow of the Bone, which I feel really represents the transition of direngrey. They kind of metamorphosize throughout these 3 albums. Will we be able to find some gold? Tune in next time to find out. If you like this video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and all that stuff. Also feel free to check out some Phoenix Splash music on YouTube and comment on those videos as well. Music on YouTube can be very difficult to spread around because the content doesn't really promote discussion. Most people just listen to it. So any comments on those videos will be greatly appreciated. And anyways guys, this is Josh from Phoenix Splash, signing off.